Admiral Vexstar stood before the massive display screen in the Zentari Empire's Outer Rim monitoring station. His 6 eyes moved across the data streams that flowed like rivers of light. For 800 years, he had watched these displays. Nothing surprised him anymore. The galaxy was mapped, cataloged, and controlled. The Zentari Empire ruled 3,000 star systems. Every ship that moved through space was known. Every species was documented. Every technology was understood and ranked. The Empire's great computers held information about everything that flew between the stars. "Admiral," called out sensor operator Clicks from her station. "We have a contact." Vexstar's middle pair of eyes focused on Clicks. New contacts were rare this far out. Most ships avoided the Outer Rim unless they had special permission from the Empire. "Show me," Vexstar said. The main display changed. A 3-dimensional map of local space appeared. Red dots marked known ships. Blue dots showed planets and stations. A single yellow dot pulsed near the edge of the display. "Unknown vessel detected at grid 779. Clicks reported. Her voice carried a note of confusion. "Admiral, the readings are strange." Vexstar moved closer to Clicks' station. Her screen showed numbers that made no sense. Velocity readings jumped up and down. Energy signatures shifted like smoke. "Run a standard identification scan," Vexstar ordered. Clicks' 4 hands moved across her controls. "Scanning now, Admiral." The station's powerful sensors reached out across space. They touched the unknown vessel and sent back information. Vexstar watched the data appear on the screens around him. Then he stopped breathing. "No match found," the computer announced in its calm voice. "Unknown propulsion system. Unknown energy signature. Unknown hull materials. Unknown origin." For the first time in 8 centuries, Admiral Vexstar felt surprise. "That's not possible," he whispered. "The Empire knew everything. Their databases contained information about every spacefaring species in the galaxy. The Zentari had been exploring space for 10,000 years. The Krillians for 8,000. The Nox for 6,000. Even the youngest species, the Voldari, had been flying between stars for 3,000 years. Every ship type was cataloged. Every engine design was documented. Every weapon system was analyzed and ranked. There were no unknowns left in the galaxy. "Operator Clicks, run the scan again," Vexstar ordered. "Already running, Admiral." Same results. Vexstar's 6 eyes focused on the display. The yellow dot moved across the screen faster than anything should move. The velocity readings climbed higher and higher. "That speed is impossible," muttered Chief Science Officer Doken. He had joined them at the main display. His 8 tentacles writhed with nervous energy. No known propulsion system can reach those speeds. The yellow dot suddenly changed direction. It turned 90 degrees without slowing down. The turn should have crushed any crew inside the ship. "Admiral," Clicks called out. Her voice was tight with worry. "The vessel just performed a turn at maximum velocity. The G-forces should have killed everyone aboard. Unless they have gravity control technology," Doken said. "But no species has that. We've been working on it for thousands of years." Vexstar watched the impossible ship dance across his displays. It moved like no ship he had ever seen. It accelerated without the gradual buildup that all engines required. It stopped instantly from maximum speed. It turned in ways that broke the laws of physics. "What about the engine signature?" Vexstar asked. Doken checked his readings. "Unknown, Admiral. The energy patterns don't match anything in our databases. Not fusion, not antimatter, not dark energy manipulation. Something entirely different." The yellow dot began moving toward the inner systems of the Empire. It passed the outer defense platforms without slowing. The automated systems tried to scan it, but their targeting computers couldn't lock on to something moving so fast. "Sound the alert," Vextar ordered. Contact Imperial Command. Tell them, we have an unknown vessel of superior technology heading toward the core systems. Alarm klaxons began wailing throughout the station. Red lights flashed. Emergency protocols activated across the Empire's communication networks. Admiral, Click said, I'm receiving reports from other monitoring stations. They're all detecting the same vessel. It's moving through Imperial space at speeds that our fastest ships can't match. Vextar felt a cold sensation in his chest. Fear. He had not felt fear in over 500 years. What do we know about the vessel size? He asked. Doken checked his instruments. Based on the sensor returns, it appears to be relatively small, maybe 300 meters long, smaller than most of our cruisers. A small ship with the power to outrun the Empire's entire fleet. The implications made Vextar's skin crawl. Sir, Communications Officer Yelp spoke up from his station. Imperial Command is requesting all available data on the unknown vessel. They're mobilizing the Third Fleet to intercept. Vextar nodded. The Third Fleet was the Empire's finest. Their ships were fast and powerful. If anyone could catch this unknown vessel, it would be them. But as he watched the yellow dot continue its impossible journey across his displays, Vextar had a terrible feeling that the Third Fleet would not be fast enough. Admiral, Click said quietly, what if this isn't just one ship? What if there are more of them? What if this is a scout for an invasion fleet? The thought had already occurred to Vextar. An unknown species with technology superior to the Empire's could be preparing for war. The single ship might be testing their defenses, learning their capabilities. Keep monitoring, Vextar ordered. I want to know everything about this vessel. How it moves, how it turns, how it generates power. Everything. As his crew worked frantically to gather data, Vextar stared at the display. Somewhere out there was a ship that broke every rule the Empire had learned about space travel. It moved like a ghost, defied physics, and came from nowhere. For the first time in 1,000 years, the mighty Xanthari Empire faced something it did not understand. And that terrified Vextar more than any enemy fleet. Commander Zaith gripped the arms of his command chair as his ship jumped to hyperspace. The Imperial Dreadnought Crusher was the fastest ship in the Xanthari fleet. Its engines could push it to speeds that would tear apart lesser vessels. Today, he hoped it would be fast enough. Jump complete, announced Navigator Prex. We are now in the Keller system. Unknown vessel should be 3 light minutes ahead of us. Zay's ship was part of a fleet of 20 vessels. The Empire had mobilized its finest ships and crews. If the unknown vessel was hostile, they would be ready. Sensors report, Zaith ordered. Sensor operator Nash bent over her displays. Contact acquired. The unknown vessel is... Admiral, it's not moving. What do you mean? It's sitting motionless in space. Like it's waiting for us. Zaith felt a chill. Nothing waited for the Imperial fleet unless it was very confident or very stupid. All ships maintain formation. Approach with caution. Zaith broadcast to his fleet that the 20 Imperial ships moved forward in perfect formation. They had trained for years to work as one unit. Each captain knew their role. Each crew was among the best in the galaxy. Contact is moving, Nash reported suddenly. Accelerating rapidly. On the main display, Zaith watched the unknown vessel begin to move. But it didn't accelerate like a normal ship. There was no gradual buildup of speed. One moment, it was motionless. The next moment, it was traveling at velocities that made his instruments scream warnings. That's not possible, whispered Engineering Chief Torx. His species had built starships for 4,000 years. No engine can go from 0 to maximum velocity in less than a second. The unknown vessel suddenly changed course. It turned toward Zaith's fleet. Instead of running away, it was coming straight at them. All ships, Battle stations, Zaith ordered. Prepare to engage unknown vessel. 20 Imperial warships powered up their weapons. Energy barriers activated around their hulls. They were ready for battle. The unknown vessel approached at impossible speed. Zaith's weapons officers tried to lock their targeting systems onto it, but the ship moved too fast and too unpredictably. "It's playing with us," Nash said quietly. She was right. The vessel darted between Zaith's ships like a small fish swimming through rocks. It came close enough to touch their hulls, then shot away before their weapons could track it. "Fire warning shots," Zaith ordered. The Imperial fleet opened fire. Energy beams and particle streams filled space around the unknown vessel, but every shot missed. The ship seemed to know where each beam would be fired before the weapons discharged. Then the unknown vessel did something that made Zaith's crew gasp in amazement. It stopped moving instantly. No deceleration period. No gradual slowing down. It simply stopped in the middle of space. "Impossible," Torx muttered. "The crew inside that ship should be dead. No living thing can survive instant deceleration from those speeds." The vessel began moving again. This time, it accelerated in a different direction. It performed turns that should have torn the ship apart. It moved up, down, left, right, forward, and backward without any regard for the laws of physics that govern normal spacecraft. "Commander," Communications Officer Velt spoke up. "The other fleets are reporting similar encounters. The vessel has appeared in 12 different systems in the past hour." 12 systems? Zaith couldn't hide his shock. That would require faster-than-light travel between engagements. Nothing moves that fast through hyperspace. Unless it's not using hyperspace, Torx suggested. But there is no other known method of faster-than-light travel. Zaith watched his fleet try to chase the impossible ship. His vessels were the pride of the Empire. They were fast, powerful, and crewed by experts. Against this unknown vessel, they looked clumsy and slow. "Nash, what can you tell me about the ship's construction?" Zaith asked. Nash adjusted her sensors for a detailed scan. "All composition is unknown. The metal alloys don't match anything in our databases. The ship appears to be generating its own gravity field. Power readings are strange. Strange how? They fluctuate wildly. Sometimes the power output is minimal, like a simple transport. Other times, it spikes to levels that should require a fusion plant the size of a space station." The unknown vessel suddenly accelerated away from the fleet. It headed toward the edge of the system at speeds that left Zaith's ships far behind. "Pursue course," Zaith ordered. "Maximum velocity." The Imperial fleet pushed their engines to the limit. Space around them blurred as they reached velocities that few ships could match. But they were still too slow. The unknown vessel pulled ahead of them easily. "Commander, we're receiving reports from the border systems," Velt announced. "The vessel has been spotted heading into uncharted space." Zaith made a decision that would change everything. "Set course for the uncharted regions. We will follow this vessel wherever it goes." His crew looked at him with surprise. The uncharted regions were dangerous. No Imperial ship had explored those areas. There could be hostile aliens, unknown hazards, or worse. "Sir, we don't have authorization to leave Imperial space," Velt pointed out. "I'm giving myself authorization," Zaith replied. "This vessel represents the greatest threat the Empire has ever faced. We need to learn what we're dealing with." The Imperial fleet changed course and headed into the unknown. Behind them, they left the safety and order of the Empire. Ahead of them lay mysteries that would challenge everything they thought they knew about space travel. As they flew deeper into uncharted space, Zaith noticed something disturbing. The unknown vessel had slowed down. It was no longer racing ahead at impossible speeds. Instead, it seemed to be waiting for them to catch up. "Nash, why would it slow down?" Zaith asked. I don't know, Commander. Maybe it wants us to follow it. The thought made Zaith uncomfortable. What kind of ship would lead an Imperial fleet into uncharted space? What was waiting for them out there? Commander, Torx called from his station. I'm detecting some kind of energy buildup from the vessel. The power readings are spiking again. Weapons? No, sir. Something else. Something we've never seen before. Space around the unknown vessel began to shimmer. Reality seemed to bend and twist near the ship's hull. The stars beyond it looked distorted, as if they were being viewed through water. What is it doing? Zaith whispered. Unknown, Commander. But whatever it is, it's operating on principles that our science doesn't understand. Zaith realized that his fleet was no longer pursuing an unknown ship. They were following something that challenged the basic laws of physics. Something that came from a civilization with technology far beyond anything the Empire had ever encountered. And it was leading them deeper into the darkness of uncharted space, where anything might be waiting. The unknown vessel stopped moving. After leading Commander Zaith's fleet through 3 star systems, it simply sat motionless in empty space. No planets, no asteroids, no stations. Just darkness and distant stars. Why did it stop here? Zaith wondered aloud. Unknown, Commander, Nash replied from her sensor station. The vessel appears to be powered down to minimal levels. Zaith studied the tactical display. His 20 ships surrounded the unknown vessel at a safe distance. They had followed it for 6 hours through uncharted space. Now it waited in the middle of nowhere. Commander, Communications Officer Velt announced suddenly. I'm receiving a transmission from the unknown vessel. The bridge fell silent. Everyone turned to look at Velt. His 4 hands moved quickly across his control panel. It's a simple radio signal, Velt continued. Basic electromagnetic transmission. Very primitive technology. What does it say? Zaith asked. That's the problem, sir. The language is completely unknown. It doesn't match anything in our translation databases. Zaith felt his stomach tighten. The Empire knew every language spoken by every spacefaring species. If the translation computers couldn't identify this language, it meant they were dealing with someone completely new. Put the transmission on the main speakers, Zaith ordered. Static filled the bridge. Then a voice spoke words that no one understood. The sounds were strange, with hard consonants and flowing vowels. The speaker sounded calm and patient. Can you make any sense of it? Zaith asked his communications officer. I'm analyzing the patterns, Gulk replied. The speaker is using mathematical concepts. Prime numbers, geometric sequences. They're trying to establish basic communication. Within minutes, more Imperial ships arrived. Admiral Vexstar himself came aboard his flagship. The old admiral brought with him the Empire's best linguists and mathematicians. Dr. Kess, the Empire's chief linguist, worked frantically at her station. Her 6 arms moved across multiple keyboards while her main eyes focused on scrolling data. They're very clever, Dr. Kess announced after an hour of work. They started with basic mathematics, then moved to chemistry. Now they're teaching us their number system and basic words. How long until we can communicate? Admiral Vexstar asked. We have basic communication now, Dr. Kess replied. Simple concepts. Yes, no, numbers. Peaceful, hostile. Admiral Vexstar nodded. Send a message. Tell them we wish to communicate. Dr. Kess composed a simple mathematical message and transmitted it. The response came immediately. More numbers, more patterns, more attempts to build a bridge between 2 completely different ways of thinking. Over the next several hours, the 2 sides slowly built a vocabulary. The unknown beings were patient teachers. They repeated concepts until the Imperial translators understood. They used pictures and diagrams transmitted as data streams. Finally, Dr. Kess looked up from her station with amazement in her eyes. Admiral, I can establish basic communication now, she announced. They call themselves humans. They come from a planet called Earth. Humans, Admiral Vextar repeated the strange word. Ask them how long they have been traveling between stars. Dr. Kess transmitted the question using their newly established language. The answer came back quickly. She stared at her screen in confusion. Admiral, they say they have been spacefaring for less than 200 years. The bridge fell silent. 200 years was nothing. The youngest known spacefaring species had been flying between stars for 3,000 years. That's impossible, Engineering Chief Torque said. No species develops this level of technology in only 200 years. Ask them about their homeworld. Admiral Vextar ordered. More messages were exchanged. Dr. Kess's expression grew more confused with each answer. They say Earth is in an isolated region of space. They have never encountered other intelligent species before. We are their first contact with alien life. Admiral Vextar felt the universe shift around him. A species that had been alone in the galaxy. A species that developed incredible technology without any help or guidance from older civilizations. Ask them about their ship, he ordered. The answer came back in mathematical formulas and technical diagrams. Dr. Kess worked with the engineering staff to understand the information. Admiral, she finally said. They're describing propulsion systems that our science says are impossible. Something called an Alcubierre drive. They claim it bends space-time to achieve faster-than-light travel without actually exceeding the speed of light. Chief Scientist Doken joined the conversation from his research station. His tentacles writhed with excitement and fear. Alcubierre drive is theoretical, Doken said. Our best scientists have worked on the concept for thousands of years. The energy requirements are enormous. It would take the power output of a star to make it work. Ask them how they solved the power problem. Admiral Vextar ordered. The humans' answer came with more diagrams and formulas. Dr. Kess and Doken worked together to understand the technical details. They're using something they call zero-point energy extraction, Doken announced. They claim they can draw unlimited power from the quantum vacuum itself. That's been proven impossible, Torx protested. Every species has tried to harness zero-point energy. The engineering challenges are insurmountable. Apparently not for humans, Dr. Kess said quietly. Admiral Vextar stared at the unknown vessel on his display screen. A small ship crewed by beings who had solved problems that had stumped the galaxy's greatest minds for millennia. Ask them if there are more ships. Like this one, he ordered. The answer made his blood run cold. They say this is just one of their exploration vessels, Dr. Kess reported. Earth has hundreds of ships exploring the galaxy. Each one is different, each one testing new technologies. Hundreds of ships, Admiral Vextar whispered. All with technology superior to ours. Admiral, Communications Officer Velt called out. I'm receiving reports from across the Empire. Our monitoring stations are detecting multiple unknown vessels in different sectors, all moving at impossible speeds. Admiral Vextar closed his 6 eyes and tried to process what he had learned. Humans were not just one ship. They were an entire civilization of beings who treated impossible technology as routine. Sir, Dr. Kess said softly, the humans are asking if we would like to meet face to face. They're offering to dock with one of our ships for direct contact. Admiral Vextar opened his eyes. He was about to meet representatives of a species that could change everything the Empire knew about technology and space travel. Tell them yes, he said, but warn them that we consider this a peaceful first contact. Any aggressive action will be met with force. The human response came back immediately. Dr. Kess smiled as she read it. They say they understand completely. They also say they're excited to meet us. This is their first time talking to aliens. As Admiral Vexstar prepared for the most important first contact in galactic history, he couldn't shake the feeling that the Empire's age of dominance was about to end. Captain Sarah Chun floated in the docking tube between her ship and the Imperial vessel. She was the first human to set foot aboard an alien spacecraft. The moment should have felt historic, but mostly she felt curious about the strange architecture around her. Admiral Vexstar waited for her in the Imperial ship's main conference room. His 6 eyes studied the human as she entered. She was smaller than he had expected, bipedal, with only 2 arms and 2 eyes. She looked fragile compared to the other species he knew. "Welcome aboard," Admiral Vexstar said through the translation device. "I am Admiral Vexstar of the Zentari Empire." "Thank you," Sarah replied. "I'm Captain Sarah Chun of the Earth vessel Curiosity. It's amazing to meet you." They sat across from each other at a large table. Dr. Kess and Chief Scientist Doken joined them, along with several other Imperial officers. Sarah sat alone, representing all of humanity. "Captain Chun," Admiral Vexstar began, "we need to understand your technology. Your ship performs maneuvers that our science says are impossible." Sarah smiled. "I guess our science disagrees with your science. We've been working on Alcubierre drives for about 50 years now. My ship is actually pretty basic compared to some of the newer models." Doken's tentacles writhed with agitation. 50 years? You solved faster than light travel in only 50 years? "Well, we had the theory for longer than that," Sarah explained. "A physicist named Miguel Alcubierre figured out the math back in the 1990s. It just took us a while to build the engines." "The energy requirements alone should be impossible," Dr. Kess protested. "You would need the power output of a star." Sarah pulled out a small device from her pocket. It looked like a simple tablet computer. "This might help explain things." She activated the device and projected a 3-dimensional diagram into the air above the table. The Imperial officers gasped. The technology to create solid light projections was considered advanced even by their standards. "This is our zero-point energy extractor," Sarah continued. "We tap directly into quantum vacuum fluctuations. The energy is everywhere around us. We just needed to figure out how to grab it." Doken studied the diagrams with growing amazement and horror. "This design. It uses principles we've never considered. You're manipulating quantum fields directly." "Sure," Sarah said casually. "Took us a few tries to get it right. We lost 3 test ships before we figured out the proper containment fields. But that's how we learn." The Imperial officers exchanged worried glances. This human spoke of losing ships and crew as if it were routine. "How many test ships did you lose total?" Admiral Vexstar thought Sarah thought for a moment. "For the Alcubierre project? Maybe 20 or 30. But we learned something from each failure. That's how science works, right?" Chief Engineer Torx spoke up from across the table. "Your species accepts such losses?" "Well, we try to minimize them," Sarah replied. "But you can't make breakthroughs without taking risks. Our test pilots know what they're getting into. They volunteer for dangerous missions." Admiral Vexstar felt sick. The Empire spent decades testing each new technology. They ran simulations for years before building prototypes. The idea of losing 30 ships to test one concept was horrifying. "Tell us about your other ships," Dr. Kess requested. "We've detected several vessels with different capabilities." Sarah's eyes lit up with excitement. "Oh, you'll love this. Each ship is an experiment. The Prometheus is testing quantum tunneling drives. The Newton is working on artificial wormhole generation. The Einstein is trying to break the light barrier entirely." "Break the light barrier?" Doken whispered. "That's theoretically impossible." "We don't really believe in impossible," Sarah said with a grin. "Just means we haven't figured it out yet." At that moment, alarms began sounding throughout the Imperial ship. Communications Officer Velt's voice came over the speakers. "Admiral, we have multiple contacts approaching. 5 unknown vessels, all moving at different velocities, using different propulsion systems." Sarah checked her tablet. "Oh good, the research fleet found us. I asked them to come take a look at your ships. They'll be excited to meet aliens." Through the conference room viewport, the Imperial officers watched 5 human vessels approach. Each ship was completely different from the others. Some were sleek and smooth. Others had bizarre appendages and geometric shapes that hurt to look at. "The weird-looking one is the Hawking," Sarah explained. "It's testing higher-dimensional physics. They're trying to build a ship that exists partially in the 4th dimension." Admiral Vestar stared at the approaching ships. "How do you test such dangerous technologies?" "Very carefully," Sarah replied. "Usually, one of the human ships suddenly vanished from sight. It reappeared a moment later several thousand kilometers away. Looks like the Tesla got their teleportation drive working," Sarah observed. "Good for them. They've been trying to crack instantaneous transportation for months." "Months?" "Doctor," Cass asked weakly. "You developed teleportation technology in months?" "Well, the theory was solid," Sarah explained. "It was just an engineering problem at that point. The human ship named Tesla flickered in and out of existence as its crew tested their new technology. Each time it reappeared in a different location." Admiral Vextar realized he was witnessing something that would change the galaxy forever. These humans didn't just have advanced technology. They had a completely different approach to science and engineering. Where other species spent centuries perfecting single advances, humans threw themselves at problems with reckless creativity. "Captain Chun," he said slowly, "how long has your species been developing these technologies?" "Oh, we really got started about 200 years ago," Sarah replied. "That's when we first left Earth. Before that, we were stuck on one planet for our entire history." 200 years, Admiral Vextar repeated. "And in that time, you developed faster-than-light travel, zero-point energy extraction, teleportation, and dimensional manipulation." "Among other things," Sarah nodded. "We've been busy. There's so much to discover out here." Another human ship did something that made the Imperial sensors scream warnings. It seemed to stretch and compress like a rubber band while moving through space. "The Curie is testing space-time elasticity," Sarah explained. "They think they can create bubbles of accelerated time. Imagine finishing a month-long journey in a few minutes from the crew's perspective." Doken made a sound like choking. "You're manipulating time itself?" "Just locally," Sarah said. "We're not trying to break causality or anything dangerous like that." Admiral Vextar looked around the table at his officers. They all had the same expression of shock and disbelief. The mighty Xanthari Empire, rulers of 3,000 star systems, had just met a species that treated their most advanced science as basic engineering problems. "Captain Chun," he said finally, "what does humanity want? Why are you exploring the galaxy?" Sarah's answer was simple and terrifying in its innocence. "We want to learn everything. We want to see what's out there. We want to make friends and discover new science and push the boundaries of what's possible." As Admiral Vextar watched the human research fleet conduct experiments that violated everything he knew about physics, he realized the Empire faced a choice. They could try to fight these humans and likely lose, or they could try to understand them. Either way, the galaxy would never be the same. Admiral Vextar sat alone in his quarters aboard the flagship. Through his viewport, he could see the human research vessels continuing their experiments. The ship called Tesla had just successfully teleported one of its shuttles across the star system. The Hawking was somehow existing in 2 places at once while its crew tested dimensional manipulation. Each impossible feat made Vexstar feel older than his 800 years. A soft chime announced a visitor. Captain Chun entered his quarters, carrying 2 cups of something that smelled pleasant. "I brought coffee," Sarah said. "It's a human drink. I thought you might like to try it." Vexstar accepted the cup with one of his secondary hands. The liquid was bitter, but warming. "Thank you, Captain Chun. Please, sit." Sarah settled into the chair across from his desk. "You look troubled, Admiral." "Your species terrifies me," Vexstar said honestly. "In 200 years, you have surpassed technologies that we have been working on for millennia." "I can understand that," Sarah replied. "But why does it terrify you? We're not here to hurt anyone." Vexstar studied her face. She seemed genuinely confused by his fear. "Captain, do you understand what your technology represents? A single one of your ships could destroy our entire fleet." "I suppose that's true," Sarah admitted. "But we wouldn't do that. We're explorers, not conquerors. How can I believe that?" Vexstar asked. "Your species has power beyond anything we've ever seen. In our experience, power leads to domination." Sarah sipped her coffee thoughtfully. "Admiral, can I tell you about human history?" Vexstar nodded. "For most of our existence, we did exactly what you're worried about," Sarah began. "Stronger groups conquered weaker ones. We fought wars over resources, territory, and ideology. We nearly destroyed our own planet several times. Then, why should I trust you now?" "Because we learned something important," Sarah explained. "Conquest is wasteful. Cooperation is more efficient. When we stopped fighting each other and started working together, that's when we really began to advance." At that moment, Admiral Vexstar's communication device chimed. Dr. Kess appeared on the small screen. "Admiral, you need to see this," Dr. Kess said urgently. "The humans are sharing their technical specifications with our science teams." Vexstar and Sarah made their way to the main conference room. The space was filled with Imperial scientists and human researchers working side by side. Holographic displays showed complex diagrams and mathematical formulas. Dr. Kess approached them with excitement in her voice. "Admiral, they're teaching us how their zero-point extractors work. They're giving us the complete technical specifications. Why?" Vexstar asked Sarah. "Because knowledge should be shared," Sarah replied. "What good is discovery if you keep it to yourself?" Chief Scientist Doken joined their conversation. His tentacles moved in patterns that indicated extreme agitation. "Admiral, this changes everything," Doken said. "With this technology, we could rebuild our entire fleet. We could revolutionize transportation, power generation, manufacturing. The possibilities are endless. What do the humans want in return?" Vexstar asked. Sarah smiled. "We want to learn from you. Your empire has been exploring space for thousands of years. You know things we don't. You've met dozens of species. You understand galactic politics and trade routes and resource management. You want to trade technology for knowledge?" Vexstar asked. "We want to be friends," Sarah corrected. "We want to learn from each other. Maybe we can help each other solve problems." Across the room, a human engineer was explaining quantum field manipulation to a group of Imperial scientists. The Imperial officers looked confused but fascinated. "Your people learn very differently than ours," Vexstar observed. "How so?" Sarah asked. "We spend decades testing each component before we build anything new. We run simulations for years. We plan everything carefully." Sarah nodded. "That's smart. But sometimes you have to just build something and see what happens. Some discoveries can only be made through trial and error." Dr. Kess approached them again. "Admiral, the human named Dr. Martinez is proposing a joint research project. He thinks our species could work together to develop something called a universal translator. It would allow instant communication between any intelligent species. Is that possible?" Vexstar asked. Dr. Martinez seems to think so, Dr. Kess replied. He says it's just an engineering problem. Vexstar was beginning to understand that humans considered almost everything to be just an engineering problem. Over the next few hours, more Imperial ships arrived at their location. Word was spreading throughout the Empire about the human encounter. Fleet commanders, scientists, diplomats, and politicians all wanted to see the impossible ships for themselves. Emperor Xyloth himself arrived aboard his massive flagship. The ruler of the Zentari Empire was over 1,000 years old. He had guided the Empire's expansion for centuries. His presence made everyone nervous, but Sarah Chun greeted the Emperor with the same casual friendliness she showed everyone else. Your Imperial Majesty, Sarah said with a small bow. I'm honored to meet you. Emperor Xyloth studied her with his 6 ancient eyes. Captain Chun, your species poses a significant challenge to the established order of this galaxy. We don't want to challenge anyone, Sarah replied. We just want to explore and learn. Yet your mere existence threatens the balance of power that has maintained peace for millennia. The Emperor continued. Sarah considered this. Maybe the balance needs to change. Maybe instead of different species competing for dominance, we could all work together. The Emperor was silent for a long moment. Around the conference room, dozens of conversations continued between humans and Imperial citizens. Ideas were being shared, problems were being solved, friendships were being formed. Admiral Vexstar, the Emperor finally said, what is your assessment of these humans? Vexstar chose his words carefully. Your Majesty, they are unlike any species we have ever encountered. Their technology is superior to ours in every way. But more importantly, they think differently than we do. Explain. They see problems as opportunities for discovery. They take risks we would never consider. They innovate at a pace that should be impossible. The Emperor nodded slowly. And what do you recommend? I recommend we learn from them, Vexstar said. Not just their technology, but their methods. Their willingness to try new approaches. Their acceptance of failure as part of learning. Sarah looked surprised. You want to change how your entire empire operates? Perhaps it's time, Emperor Xyloth said thoughtfully. We have been rulers of this galaxy for so long that we forgot how to grow. Over the following days, something unprecedented began to happen throughout the Zentari Empire. Human advisors were invited to work with Imperial research teams. Traditional hierarchies began to break down as scientists were encouraged to experiment with new ideas. The rigid planning processes that had governed Imperial science for millennia were relaxed to allow for faster innovation. Not everyone was happy with the changes. Some Imperial officers complained that humans were too reckless, too willing to take dangerous risks. But the results spoke for themselves. Research projects that had been stalled for decades suddenly showed progress. The first joint human Imperial research vessel was launched within a month. It was a hybrid design that combined Imperial durability with human innovation. The ship could travel faster than any previous Imperial vessel while maintaining the safety standards that the Empire demanded. Admiral Vexstar stood on the bridge of this new ship, watching stars blur past at impossible speeds. Beside him, Captain Sarah Chen monitored the experimental systems. Admiral, Sarah said, I have a question for you. Yes? What do you think will happen to the Empire now? Vexstar considered the question. Around him, human and Imperial crew members worked together at stations designed using principles from both civilizations. I think we will become something new, he replied. Not just the Zentari Empire, but something better. A partnership of species working together to explore the galaxy. Sarah smiled. I like that idea. Through the viewport, Vexstar could see other ships from the joint fleet. Each vessel was an experiment in cooperation. Each crew was learning that the galaxy was bigger and more wonderful than any single species could explore alone. The Empire's age of domination was indeed over. But something better was taking its place. Something that embraced change instead of fearing it. Something that turned the impossible into the merely challenging. For the first time in 800 years, Admiral Vexstar felt truly excited about the future.